Hi everyone, I'm Paul Cicchini, author of The Essentials and teach the essentials of good character with the essentials. I'm a psychologist as well as an author, and I've written a few fiction novels for young adults over the years, but I decided to create The Essentials specifically with our students in mind. I wanted to give them characters that they could identify with and look up to as role models. Now, I've been a school psychologist for over 17 years now, and my practice has brought me to every kind of school community, affluent, suburban, urban, and even rural. Wherever I went, my coworkers and colleagues would come up to me and they were frustrated. They would tell me that there seemed to be a worrisome decline in the amount of manners, respect, empathy, and tolerance displayed by their students. Well, I noticed it too, not just with the students that I regularly counseled in special education, but with students in general. It concerned me so much that I decided to do something about it. So I first learned everything I could about social emotional learning and obtained a certification in character education. My superhero novel, The Essentials, and my curriculum guide built around it is the culmination of my studies in SEL. In my practice, I noticed that one way I could easily reach my students was by talking about superheroes. They love them, and it was a great way to break the ice and connect with them. So when I set out to create my own character ed lessons, I knew I wanted to use superheroes to convey that message. However, instead of trying to tweak or bend the lessons to suit the backstories of established, well-known comic book superheroes, I decided to create my own original heroes. 12 teenage superheroes that are as unique and as diverse as today's students. There are characters that are white, African American, biracial, Hispanic, Asian American, Indigenous American, Muslim, LGBT, and even one on the autism spectrum. I developed their personalities to exemplify good character traits such as loyalty, honesty, caring, leadership, and tolerance. And in their adventures, the Essentials tackle some of today's biggest societal challenges that are facing our students, such as diversity, teamwork, and overcoming fear. And now you can bring the Essentials into your school or classroom or counseling practice, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that with one of my character education PowerPoint lessons for the Essentials. Now I'm going to assume that you're a pretty busy educational professional, so you haven't had time to read a YA middle grade novel, so I'm going to start with the backstory of the Essentials just to bring you up to speed. Okay, let's get started with the PowerPoint presentation. Now I know that just reading PowerPoint slides verbatim can get pretty tedious and boring, so I'll try not to do that, and I know that you could read yourself. So who are the Essentials? Well, as I mentioned before, they are 12 superheroes that are teenagers. But in the beginning of my novel, they're broken up into 4 different groups, clans, if you want to call them that, but they don't know of each other's existence. And each one of the teenagers is an extreme sports junkie. But besides that, they also have a love of learning and a love of science as well, and that's going to come into play. At one specific time, each simultaneously, all of these teenagers have an encounter, a close encounter, with something out of this world. And as a result, they're imbued with unique superpowers. And these powers have a connection with our world. They not only have a connection with their scientific interests, but the 4 aspects of our world having to do with earth, water, air, and fire. Now, one time, the alchemists, remember those ancient scientists? Well, they believed that those 4 things, earth, water, air, and fire, were the building blocks of our universe. And they called them the essential elements, and that's where the Essentials get their name. So let's go through the different clans separately. The first is the Diggers. Those are 3 of the teens that powers derive from the earth. They're Rocky, Maker, and Arsenal. The next group is what I call the Surfers. They derive their powers from water, and they are Hydro, Fisk, and Triton. The third group derives all their power from the air or from the atmosphere or from the cosmos. And they can travel quickly by flying. I call them the gliders. And they include Eagle, Turbine, and DM, which is short for dark matter. And finally, the fourth clan is called the Bunsen's. They derive their power from, what the ancients would have called fire, but it's really energy or electricity. And the three teens in that group are Sparks, Fuega, and Tempest. They can travel quickly via electrical impulse, and because they're science geeks, that's why I call them the Bunsen's. So, how does the storyline of the Essentials novel develop? So these teens learn of their powers, they start to use them, they start to develop them, and they start to increase in power. And one day, they accidentally run into each other. They weren't aware of their existence before, and then they run into each other. And when they first do, it's not good. They take an instant dislike to each other. After all, oil and water don't mix. Well, certainly fire and water aren't going to mix, and electricity and water aren't going to mix either. So that's why they sort of clash with each other. And it's almost like a gigantic game of rock, paper, scissors where they can cancel each other's powers out. So even though they grade against each other, they grudgingly acknowledge each other's existence. But then they're not sure what their next step is going to be. And that's when Argo appears. Argo is the extraterrestrial that actually imbued them with these powers. And Argo reaches out to them in a dream, and he reveals that he's the one that gave them their powers, and that it is an incredible gift, and they should not squander that gift, because that's how Argo's civilization destroyed itself, by exploiting those powers, and that they needed to use these powers for a greater good. So Argo goes on to say that in order to use those powers for good, they were going to have to learn how to get along with each other and act as a team, because there was a great threat to their existence, not only them, but their entire planet, and they needed to do something about it. Now, we know from science that the world is made up of a lot more elements than just those four mythical ones: earth, air, fire, and water. And last time I counted, there was 118 elements in the periodic table, but the teens decided to call themselves the Essentials. So the next slide is a set of discussion questions that you can have with your students. After you explain to them about the beginnings of the Essentials, you can have them review these discussion questions. They are great openers. Each one of the lessons is going to have those discussion questions, follow-up discussions, and also activities. Now, this slide explains an activity that you can do with your students. Now, I'm going to finish up this lesson by going into one of the individual teen superheroes of the Essentials. The one that I'm going to start with is Arsenal, because he's really cool and I love his powers. Now, the first member of the clan that I call the Diggers that I want to talk about is Arsenal. He's a very, very cool character. I have a lot of personal connections with him. He, as one of the Diggers, gets his powers from the earth. He has the ability to pick up anything of the earth, whether it is a rock or even a grain of sand, or even something that is made out of clay. He can pick that up and he could rub it between his thumb and forefinger and imbue it with a bunch of kinetic energy. And then he can throw that with great accuracy and great power, so that it is almost like a missile or a projectile, but a non-lethal one. That's one of the things that I like about Arsenal, is that he never uses any kind of lethal power. He absolutely abhors the use of guns. He is an expert in all sorts of weaponry, whether it is swords or martial arts objects such as nunchakus, but he never uses a gun because he thinks that using lethal force is something that is wrong. Arsenal's real name is Marco Payne, which is a derivative of Hugh de Payne's. Marco is half African American and half of French heritage. And he actually is a descendant of the founder of the Templar Knights, Hugh de Payne's. And he finds that out, and he really takes that to heart. He learns all about the Templars, and he decides that he's going to live his life just like a knight. And that becomes very important. Now, because Marco loves knights and chivalry and everything having to do with a chivalrous life, he often is the conscience of the Essentials. He's the one that always tells his teammates to live their lives honorably and act honorably. Arsenal loves the Templar so much that his costume, his uniform, even looks like a knight's uniform. How do I know about the Templar Knights? Well, that's because I have first-hand experience with them. The modern Templar Knights are known as the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, and I'm a member of that order. My rank is Knights Commander. Now, I want to stress that the modern Templars are not crusaders. We are simply a charitable organization that stresses living an honorable, chivalrous life. We are a religious order, but we get along with all religions. So this is the Templar Knights Code of Honor that Arsenal likes to live by, and he likes to encourage his fellow Essentials to live by as well. Number 1, protect the weak. Be kind to others. Be polite. Be trustworthy. Be honest. And most important, never ever turn your back on someone in trouble, even if it is your enemy. You should show charity towards your enemies. So in this next slide, we have the discussion questions for the lesson on Arsenal. And it has all to do with living by a code of honor. And then finally, we end this lesson with an activity that drives home the point that our students should internalize a personal code of honor, which they should operate their lives through. And it can expand to everything from being honest during test taking to being charitable. And that wraps up the first lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find it useful. Feel free to contact me through Research Press. I would love to hear back from you. I'd love to hear feedback on how you feel that this is working, whether your students are enjoying it, and if you've even done any kind of data collection in regards to its effectiveness. Thanks again. Hope to talk to you soon.